My name is Emma Carter, and for as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving dinners at my parents' house were a battlefield disguised as a holiday tradition. Every year, we gathered around that massive oak table, pretending to be a happy family while tension simmered just beneath the surface. You could almost taste the unspoken grudges, the hidden resentments in the air like a storm waiting to break. This year was no different, except something was about to change everything. I was halfway through my third bite of cranberry sauce when my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. At a family dinner, that's practically an invitation for trouble, but this text was unlike any I'd ever received before. It read, "Get up and leave, don't say anything to your parents." My heart stopped for a second, a rush of confusion flooding my mind. Who could be sending me this? Was it a prank? Some kind of cruel joke timed perfectly for the worst possible moment. But the tone was urgent, almost desperate, the kind of message you don't ignore. I glanced around the table, catching my mom smiling politely, my dad tapping his fork impatiently, and my siblings laughing a little too loudly. None of them noticed the small tremor in my hand as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The room felt heavier all of a sudden, like the air had thickened with secrets. Curiosity tangled with caution. I wanted to ask what was going on, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I swallowed hard, pretending to focus on my mashed potatoes while the mysterious text burned in my mind. I knew somehow that I had to leave, but not yet, not without knowing what was really happening. That night at that table was the start of a story I never imagined I'd be telling. A story about family, betrayal, power, and revenge. The kind of story that changes who you are forever. And it all began with that single, impossible text. Our family business wasn't just a company. It was the very foundation of who we were. My parents built it from nothing, piece by piece, brick by brick. When I was little, I watched my father work endless hours, arriving home late, tired but determined. My mother juggled running the household and answering calls at odd hours, all to keep the dream alive. It started as a small local construction firm. Just Dad, a couple of trucks, and a handful of workers. There were times when I thought it would never survive. The economy crashed, projects fell through, bills piled up. But they never gave up. Their sacrifices were monumental. I remember Mom skipping meals to save money, Dad working through his own health problems just so he could finish contracts on time. That company became the heartbeat of our family. It was more than profits and contracts, it was our legacy. For my parents, it was proof that hard work and grit could change your destiny. But as much as I admired their dedication, I never felt like I truly belonged in that world. From an early age, it was clear the business, and the affection that came with it, wasn't mine to claim. My older brother, Jake, was the golden child, the one Dad praised for his sharp business sense and leadership skills. My sister, Laura, charming and flawless, effortlessly won my mother's approval. And me, I was just Emma, the quiet one, the dreamer, the daughter who didn't quite fit the mold. I worked hard, but my efforts were often overlooked. It felt like I was invisible, a shadow on the sidelines while my siblings took center stage. I learned to hide my hurt behind a smile, to pretend their favoritism didn't cut me deeply. But inside, I was burning, betrayed by the very people who should have believed in me the most. That Thanksgiving, as Dad dropped the bombshell that he was selling the family business and that I was getting nothing, I saw the truth laid bare. My siblings cheered like they'd won a prize, their joy stabbing at my heart. But instead of breaking down, I smiled. Because in that moment, I knew I was holding a secret, a power they never expected I'd have. They thought they were celebrating my downfall. But they had no idea what was coming. The moment Dad spoke those words, The air in the room shifted like an earthquake had cracked the ground beneath us. "We're selling the family business," he said, voice steady but heavy with finality. "And Emma, you're getting nothing." Time slowed. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My siblings exchanged triumphant looks, their smiles wide and victorious like they'd just won a battle they'd been waiting for. Their cheers filled the room, sharp and mocking, but I sat still, my heart pounding loud enough to drown out their noise. I forced my face to stay calm, though inside a storm raged betrayal, disbelief, and a flicker of something darker, something fierce. I wanted to scream, to question, to demand the truth, but I held back. I looked straight at Dad and asked quietly, "Who's buying the business?" He puffed up with pride and said, "Everest Holdings. They're paying $50 million. The room buzzed with whispers of approval and disbelief. My siblings beamed, already dreaming of what they'd do with their shares. But I stayed silent for a beat longer, then let a slow smile curve my lips. "Dad," I said, voice low but steady, "I am Everest Holdings." For a moment the room fell utterly silent, the kind of silence that presses down hard on your chest and refuses to break. Dad's eyes widened. His smug expression faltered. My siblings' laughter died on their tongues, replaced by confusion and shock. Some looked at me like I was a stranger in their home. That night, as the silence stretched, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point. The moment when everything changed, no longer the overlooked daughter, no longer the shadow in the background. I was a force to be reckoned with. That text, the one that shattered the quiet tension at dinner, didn't come from just anyone. It came from someone I trusted more than most, my longtime lawyer and closest business ally, Marcus. He's the one who had been quietly guiding me through the shadows, while my family remained blissfully unaware. You see, while my parents were busy building their empire the old-fashioned way, I was carving out my own path. I wasn't born into Everest Holdings. I became Everest Holdings. Years ago, I realized the family business was never truly mine. So I started small, consulting gigs, discreet investments, buying shares under different names. It was painstaking, invisible work. No flashy announcements, no public declarations, just relentless, strategic moves that built into something powerful, something untouchable. There were nights I barely slept, juggling work and pretending everything was fine at home. There were sacrifices, missing birthdays, broken friendships, and moments of deep loneliness. I gave up comfort, security, even parts of myself to make this happen. And all the while, I kept the secret locked tight, because if my family ever found out, it would mean war. That text from Marcus wasn't just a warning. It was a signal, the moment to act, the moment to take back what had always been mine, even if they refused to see it. I knew the battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. The days following that Thanksgiving dinner were like walking through a storm I couldn't escape. The moment I revealed I was Everest Holdings, the fragile peace in the family shattered completely. What followed were a series of confrontations that ripped through years of silence, resentment, and hidden pain. My parents looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and anger, as if I had become a stranger overnight. "How could you do this?" Dad spat one evening, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. "You were never part of this family business. You had no right." My mother, usually the pillar of calm, turned cold and distant, her eyes filled with a sadness I hadn't seen before. "Emma, we raised you. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. My siblings were no better." Jake sneered openly, accusing me of betrayal, while Laura's once warm smiles turned into icy glares. The house, once filled with laughter and forced holiday cheer, now echoed with sharp words and slammed doors. Each confrontation reopened old wounds, memories of feeling overlooked at family gatherings, of being the other, child who never quite fit in. The childhood neglect, the whispered favoritism, the countless times I swallowed my pain to keep the peace, all of it came rushing back. But amid the heartbreak and coldness, something inside me was rising, a quiet but fierce confidence that whispered I was no longer the powerless girl they tried to keep in the shadows. I had fought too hard and come too far to be dismissed now. There were moments when the weight of it all threatened to crush me, nights when loneliness crept in, and I questioned if revenge was worth the cost. But then, in those quiet hours, I found strength in my own reflection, in the truth that I was finally reclaiming my story. This was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I mattered. After the initial storm of confrontations settled into a tense silence, I knew it was time to stop reacting and start controlling. The days of being the overlooked daughter were over. I had a plan, a carefully crafted strategy to reclaim what was rightfully mine. It began with the legal groundwork Marcus and I had laid months before. We meticulously reviewed every contract, every clause, every loophole. The family business, despite its surface success, had cracks. Old agreements buried in dusty files, promises broken and kept secret. We used these to our advantage, slowly chipping away at their defenses. I wasn't just fighting with papers, though. Behind the scenes, I reached out to former employees, business partners, and industry insiders, people who had witnessed the darker side of the family empire. Their stories painted a picture of greed, favoritism, and betrayal that no one wanted to admit. Each discovery fueled my resolve, but also deepened the ache. Family secrets aren't easy to expose. They come with a price. Some allies I found were reluctant. Others became bitter enemies overnight. But I learned quickly to navigate these treacherous waters, balancing my desire for revenge with the need to keep my conscience intact. There were moments when the tension felt unbearable, when I questioned if I was losing myself in the fight. Was I crossing a line? Was there room for forgiveness, or was this war inevitable? Through every high and low, I kept reminding myself why I started. This wasn't just about money or control. It was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity, and my future. Step by step, I moved closer to turning the tide, one calculated move at a time. When the boardroom doors slammed open that day, I could feel every eye turn toward me, a storm of disbelief and barely concealed panic washing over the room. This was my moment, the culmination of months of careful strategy and silent preparation. I wasn't just a shadow in their lives anymore. I was the force rewriting the rules. I presented my case with precision, documents, financial reports, testimonies from insiders, evidence they couldn't ignore. With each piece, the family's confident facade cracked. Dad's usual stern demeanor faltered. His voice grew shaky as he tried to argue back, but it was clear he was on the losing side. My siblings, once so smug, now stared with wide eyes and clenched jaws, desperation creeping into their expressions. They tried to rally, whispering behind closed doors, launching legal challenges meant to stall me, to intimidate me. But their efforts were futile. Every move I made was calculated, every counterstrike swift. It wasn't just about winning, it was about justice. The scales had finally tipped in my favor, and with each small victory, I felt a growing sense of vindication. I wasn't just reclaiming a business, I was reclaiming respect, identity, and the truth buried beneath years of lies. Yet, even in my triumph, moments of doubt surfaced. Late nights when the weight of what I was doing pressed down hard, when the line between revenge and righteousness blurred. Was I becoming what I once despised? Could I forgive those who'd hurt me? Or was this fight forever? The tension mounted, every victory bringing me closer to the climax, the moment when everything would change, and my family would have no choice but to face the truth. The day I stood before the board of directors, and, by extension, my family, was the day everything came into sharp, undeniable focus. No more secrets, no more whispers behind closed doors. I was no longer the invisible daughter, the overlooked sister. I was Everest Holdings. As I unveiled the full extent of my ownership, the room fell into stunned silence, heavier than any before. My parents' faces drained of color, eyes wide with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and something like regret. My siblings stared, mouths slightly open, as if trying to catch the words but unable to process them fully. In that moment, I saw years of neglect and betrayal crystallize in their expressions. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and now they were forced to confront a truth that shook the very foundation of everything they thought they controlled. Despite the flood of emotions swirling in the room, anger, confusion, shame, I remained composed, my voice steady, my posture confident. This was my victory, but it was also a reckoning, a moment to demand respect, not just as a businesswoman, but as their daughter and sister. I reflected silently on what power really meant, not just the ability to control assets or decisions, but the courage to stand firm in the face of those who doubted you. The strength to reclaim your story, even when it means breaking the ties that once bound you. The confrontation was raw, emotional, but I refused to be drawn into bitterness or rage. Instead, I offered them a mirror showing the consequences of their actions and the price of their choices. This was not just my triumph, it was their moment of reckoning. Looking back on this journey, I realize it wasn't just about winning a business or proving my worth. It was about confronting pain, deep, raw pain that had lingered in the corners of my heart for years. I learned that growth often comes wrapped in hardship, and sometimes revenge and forgiveness are two sides of the same coin. Family isn't always what we hope it to be. Sometimes it disappoints, sometimes it hurts. But identity isn't defined by blood or approval. It's forged through the strength to stand up for yourself, to claim your place in the world. I discovered that self-worth isn't given. It's earned by the battles we fight and the scars we wear proudly. And while the road was lonely at times, it was also empowering, a testament to what we can overcome when we refuse to be invisible. Now, as I look to the future, I see new beginnings, a chance to build not just an empire, but a life on my own terms, one filled with respect, purpose, and authenticity. To anyone listening, remember this: resilience isn't just surviving, it's thriving. It's knowing your value, standing tall in your truth, and reclaiming your power no matter the odds. This is my story, not just of revenge, but of awakening, strength, and ultimately freedom.